This war started more than 100 years ago. Huge amounts of resources, economic and military, continue to be invested in it. It has been necessary to design new weapons systems that, until then, had not been necessary. And it must be recognized that these weapons have never produced direct deaths. We are referring to the Cold War and the first of its key weapon systems, strategic reconnaissance aircrafts. Today, we are going to meet the Dragon Lady. He starred more than 65 years in the contemporary history of the Cold War. Although others think that, really, the Dragon Lady was the one who caused the biggest international incidents during those years. The Cold War was born between two antagonistic forms of thought: communist socialism, led by the Soviet Union and China, and democratic liberalism, driven especially by the United States and Great Britain. After the end of World War II, Middle Europe is under the socialist yoke of the Communist Soviet Union. After helping to defeat Hitler, he occupied and annexed, militarily and politically, several European countries. In all of them, he imposed the Red Terror, forming a union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. The other half of Europe was liberated with the help of the United States, and democratic governments could be developed. Each of them tried to impose USSR, or develop USA, a different type of society, for the rest of the world. And so, the so-called Cold War materialized. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, was born in 1947 as an intelligence service. The CIA's main objective is to obtain and analyze all information that could affect the national security of the United States. The most commonly used means was through the use of field agents, spies. During the summer of 1949, the Soviet Union surprised the world and the intelligence services of the United States. It had just carried out its first nuclear test, with a hydrogen bomb fusion, in the desert of Kazakhstan. It was 20 times more devastating than the one detonated in Hiroshima, or 1,000 times more than a conventional nuclear bomb. The U.S. would need to wait 3 years, until 1952, to be able to carry out its first test with this type of bomb. It was clear that the USSR was very advanced in its nuclear technological development, much more than the West. And it seemed that it was preparing for a new world war, but this time nuclear. world really needed to know what the true power of the Soviet Union bombers was. Since together with nuclear submarines, they were the commonly used vector. But the problem was that there were vast regions of Soviet territory that were unknown and difficult to reach by conventional means. The CIA needed to find a solution to this lack of information about the enemy within its own territory. And the solution was to find better strategic recognition systems. With this background, it is decided that it will be necessary to start promoting electronic espionage from the air. The objective was to build a spy plane capable of flying at high altitude and obtaining good photos of the terrain. It was negotiated with three main manufacturers, Bell, Martin, and Fairchild. But Lockheed also wants to participate in the new spy plane. So, in 1954, he presented the plans for an unconventional aircraft, CL-282. It was a large glider, with a small engine, which allowed it to go up to 70,000 feet. But the CIA needs results quickly, and they turn to the only aircraft available at the time, bombers. And the plane that was capable of flying at the highest altitude was the RB-57A Canberra bomber. With the designation RB-57A, Night Intruder, it reached 47,000 feet, and had two engines. But the Soviet radar technology was much more advanced. And American bombers are beginning to be easily detected by Soviet radars. That is why the US realized that they need a plane that flies much higher to evade them. Finally, the USAF comes out with its plans and begins to design a new aircraft based on the Lockheed CL-282. Although it was the CIA who provided the necessary funds for this project and who would decide on the missions to be carried out, while the USAF would put the training, the pilots, and the maintenance of the aircraft. The new aircraft would be designated as U-2, U for utility, to hide its true objective, which was strategic reconnaissance. This is the famous Area 51 base, or Air Force Test and Training Field, located in the Nevada state, USA. The USAF, at the beginning of the Cold War, needed an isolated base to test its new intelligence systems. This is where Lockheed moved its new CL-282 aircraft to make the first flights. This was the moment when the first prototype of the future U-2 aircraft emerged from the hold of AC-124 Globalmaster. It was designed by Lockheed in just 8 months. We are in Hangar 1 of the base, where the Lockheed and USAF military technical teams are located. The basic objective of its design was to have a very light aircraft with the best performance for flights at high altitudes. Because every extra kilo and a half on the plane would take 0.34 centimeter, 1 foot, away from reaching your maximum flight altitude. It had a single PWJ-57 engine, which produced up to 7,700 kilograms of thrust. Its takeoff weight, fully loaded with fuel, was less than 11,000 kilograms. It had a range of up to 4,800 kilometers, 3,000 miles. Its fuselage was made of aluminum. Its wingspan, initially, was 24 meters, U-2 ANC. The flight speed was only 690 kilometers per hour, although sufficient for the operational conditions of aerial reconnaissance. This is the reason why it could reach up to 21.4 kilometers high, 70,000 feet. Here, we can see the inside of the U-2 plane. Behind the pilot's seat is the compartment for the removable camera system. The U-2 carried a camera that, from an altitude of 18,000 kilometers, could see any object larger than 76 centimeters. He made a total of 4,000 stereoscopic photographs in 3 dimensions. It was capable of storing up to 3,500 kilometers of terrain on its photographic reel. And the width of the photographed terrain was 200 kilometers. This photographic material, once the plane reached its base, was removed from the plane to be processed and analyzed by CIA personnel. On the ground, 2 small wheels, jumpers were placed under the middle of each wing to keep the U-2 balanced. Once it took off, these jumpers were detached from the plane in flight. The U-2 was essential to keep up with the Soviet Union's number of bases and number of nuclear weapons around the world. And we cannot finish this first video of the U-2 series without explaining the secret of this nickname of the Dragon Lady. This nickname was given to even the most experienced pilots in the USAF due to the difficulty of flying the U-2. This was due to the fact that it was an extremely light aircraft, which needed to fly at an extreme altitude.